Since its emergence in Wuhan, China, the coronavirus pandemic has tightened its grip on the world. 6 months ago, the WHO announced that the coronavirus could spread between people. Now it has reached almost every country in the world, shutting down economies and forcing whole continents to enact emergency responses. The most rapid spread of the virus is now in South America. To date, there have been 14 million infections and 600,000 deaths, and this number is rising every day. The global scientific machine has jumped into action, and scientists have learned a lot about the virus, but there are still many questions researchers are working to answer. Why do people respond so differently to infection? Different people have strikingly different responses to COVID-19 infection. Some never develop symptoms, whereas other seemingly healthy people have severe and sometimes fatal pneumonias. There are multiple teams of researchers investigating the possibility that there could be a genetic component. The first strong genetic links to severe COVID-19 suggested that people who developed respiratory failure are more likely to carry either one of 2 gene variants. These variations only seem to play a small part in the disease, but it's hoped that further research will uncover more significant genetic markers for severe symptoms. Many studies have also shown striking variations between social and ethnic groups. The causes of these disparities are not clear, but it is likely that they're linked to socio-economic inequality. Can we develop immunity, and if so, how long does it last? This is a big question, and immunologists are working feverishly to determine what immunity to SARS-CoV-2 could look like. Studies have found that the immune system can create high levels of neutralizing antibodies against SARS-CoV-2, which remain high for a few weeks after infection, but then typically begin to wane. Antibodies might linger at higher levels for longer when people have suffered a more severe infection, but researchers still don't know the level of neutralizing antibodies needed to prevent reinfection or reduce COVID-19 symptoms. Ultimately, antibodies are just one part of the immunity story. Other immune cells, called T cells, are important for long-term immunity too. Researchers must piece together this patchwork of immune responses and compare them with infections from other viruses to estimate how durable protection might be. Has the virus developed any worrying mutations? All viruses mutate as they infect people, and SARS-CoV-2 is no exception. Molecular epidemiologists have used these mutations to trace the global spread of the virus. But scientists are also on the lookout for changes that affect the properties of the virus, for instance, making it more or less virulent or transmissible. Identifying worrying mutations is tricky, as most changes won't affect how the virus spreads in humans. In fact, these mutations won't become apparent until the virus needs to mutate to survive. And that won't happen until most of the world's population has been infected or developed immunity. How well will a vaccine work? An effective vaccine may be the only way out of the pandemic. There are currently about 200 candidates in development worldwide, with around a dozen in clinical trials, several of which have already reported that their vaccines seem safe. The first large-scale efficacy trials are set to begin this summer, but data from early-stage human trials and animal studies seem tentatively hopeful. Studies in macaques suggest that vaccines may do a good job preventing lung infection, but not elsewhere in the body, such as the nose. Results such as this raise the possibility of a COVID-19 vaccine that prevents severe disease, but not the spread of the virus. What is the origin of the virus? Most researchers now agree that SARS-CoV-2 originated in horseshoe bats, but it's not yet known if it jumped directly from bats to humans. Rat G13, a coronavirus found in bats, is 96% identical to SARS-CoV-2, but that 4% difference represents decades of evolution, possibly in an intermediary species. According to some researchers, this could be Malayan pangolins. But to unequivocally trace the virus's journey to people, scientists would need to find an almost identical version in an animal, a prospect that is further complicated by the fact that the virus has been shown to spread back from people to animals, with cats, dogs, and farmed minks all showing signs of infection. More than 6 months after the emergence of COVID-19, scientists continue to search for answers. And while progress has been made, it's clear there is still a long road ahead.